Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to look at a couple of comics that you may want to consider sending in if you happen to own these books. And right now, with where the economy is, a lot of people aren't comfortable spending large amounts of money on new books, but they still want to be involved in the hobby. And by sending a raw book that you already own in to be graded, you have an opportunity to still be involved and also to recognize a value increase through the grading process. And so we're going to look at a couple of books that you may want to consider sending in. We're going to be pulling all of this data from comicspriceguide.com. There is a link down in the description. I encourage you to check them out. And if you're interested in winning some freebies from them, I definitely want to encourage you to sign up for their newsletter. When they reach 2 million books in their database, they're going to be giving away a bunch of prizes. And so you can register on their website, comicspriceguide.com. With that said, let's get to the video. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get things started by taking a look at a couple of books that were actually suggested to me by subscribers that had watched previous installments of this series. And I'll tell you, the books that they asked me to take a look at are some cool books, so I have no problem doing it. The first book that was recommended is this one right here. It is X-Men issue number 94, published in 1975 by Marvel Comics. This book is the second appearance of Nightcrawler, Storm, Thunderbird, Colossus, and also the fourth appearance of Wolverine. You cannot go wrong with a lineup like that. But if you look here, let me blow this up a little bit larger. What's great about comicspriceguide.com is that they have the 2 columns of data that show you raw values, graded values for each one of the grades or the condition of the book. So it's relatively straightforward to figure out where things lie. But what we're going to do is, as we scroll down the list here for the graded values in this last column, you can see that the values for this book are relatively high, all the way down to a 0.5. At a 0.5, this book has a value of $170. So long story short, it really doesn't matter what grade you have of X-Men issue number 94. It is a book that is worthy to send in. One, because it is a great book, a great piece of history, but also because it has some solid value all the way down to a 0.5. So you cannot go wrong there. I will tell you, for this video series, I generally use $70 as the cost for the book itself, right? And this includes the cleaning, the pressing, the shipping, the book itself. I include in there a cost of about $70. That's the threshold that we use to evaluate, does it make sense to send it in or not? And so again, you know, even if you paid 70 bucks all in to get this book clean, press, graded, all that kind of stuff, it is still worth it to send it in down to a 0.5 because of the value being greater than that $70. And again, what you can do is you can make the adjustments on your side as to whether you paid more for the book or whether you don't get it cleaned or pressed because you did that yourself. You can make those kinds of adjustments, but just a solid book. Let's look at one other book here really quickly. Issue number 95, and this is The Death of Thunderbird, third appearance of the X-Men team. Again, another really awesome book, and it's like right here, so why not take a look at it? This one is a little bit of a different story, right? As you go down the list here, you can start to see that the values get a little lower on the lower end of the grading spectrum. So if you look here about the 4.0 mark, that's where it gets a little dicey, right? Because again, if you assume that you paid about $70 to get the book clean, pressed, all that kind of stuff, its value is at $85. You can decide whether you want to send it in. You know, I personally would want to be maybe closer to a 5.0 or higher because that has a value of $100. But again, everyone has a slightly different thresholds. Not a terrible book in any way, shape, or form. And again, you know, there's nothing wrong with Mylar and plastic and top loaders and Gator guard cases and all that kind of stuff if you happen to have a book that you don't want to send in to be graded. There's nothing wrong with just doing some regular type of protection for that comic. But again, X-Men issue number 95, not a terrible book. The same can be said of issue number 94. That is a fantastic book. I absolutely love reading that book. Just a great story, in my opinion. One other thing that I'll mention here as I backtrack to issue number 94 once again, is that I'm using $70 as the cost here. And this makes sense for all of the books that we're going to look at in this specific video, because all of these books were published in 1975 or later. If you have a book that was published in 1974 or earlier, then you have to increase your cost, right? Your costs go up because the cost to get that book clean press graded by CGC is actually higher. You actually add on $15 for pressing because it's an older book and $12 more for grading. So your overall cost actually goes up $27 additional dollars. So again, for this exercise, 1975 or newer, we are using $70 as the cutoff. If you have an older book, you can add $27 to that to make your determination as to where the cutoff happens to be. But again, X-Men books, you cannot go wrong with a little bit of X-Men. So the next book that we're going to look at again is another book that was recommended to me by a subscriber. It is New Mutants 87. This is the first appearance of Cable. Dope character, no doubt about it. But this book's value has cooled off like a lot of other books. This book was super hot for a while, like every other book, and this one has cooled down. And so the person was asking the question of, hey, has it cooled down so much that it doesn't make sense to send it in? Well, let's go ahead and look at that. Again, going to this last column, the graded column, you can go down the list here and see that when you get about the 7.0, that's when it gets a little dicey, right? At the 7.0, fine to very fine, you have a value, graded value of $90. And again, if we are assuming a cost of $70, you may want to try to be north of that a little bit more. So you might want to say, hey, let's go for the 8.0. Anything that is 8.0 or very fine or above might be a good place. It's $110 that might give you a little bit of comfort. But again, your collection, you're investing into your collection, but you want to do so smartly, right? If you're going to spend a couple of bucks on the book, you want to make sure that that value is there. And so, you'll have to figure out where it is that you want to draw that line. All right. So again, this is not a terrible book. I have a copy of this in the collection, a 9.8 that I was lucky enough to score in the 100K collection and send in and get graded. A really awesome book, some Rob Liefeld action. So again, you cannot go wrong with New Mutants issue number 87. All right. So the next book that I want to look at is a book that has taken the comic book community by storm in some ways over the last few weeks. It is World Tree issue number 1. And already I've actually received questions from people as to whether this is a book that they should grade. My answer is no. I personally would not grade this book right now. And there are several reasons for it. First, I don't think that there are any on the census just yet. So we don't really have any true sales data to determine a fair market value for this book just yet, right? These, I think, are like placeholders that they're putting in there. And again, you look at it, it's not that far off from basically the raw value, right? Because there really isn't any great sales data for them to draw upon. So, my rule of thumb when it comes to brand new comics is to wait 3 to 6 months to see how that book is performing. Because what will happen is a book will come out, it will capture people's attention, FOMO will kick in, people will start buying that book for crazy amounts of money. And then when the FOMO wears off, the value of that book declines. And this happens, especially if you're talking about a really talented creative team like James Tyan is the writer on this thing. He's a talented guy and people want to be a part of what he's working on, but we don't know whether there is a fandom that is going to be able to support this book long term. And so I would hate for someone to spend, let's just say $70 to get the book, to get it clean, pressed, graded, shipped to CGC, to have it come back and to figure out that the book's actually not even worth $70. That to me is one of the worst things that can happen. This is about investing smartly into your own collection. If you own this book, just hold on to it and see how things perform. The other thing that you can do is you can send this book in at the appropriate time, and you can decide what appropriate is. You can send it in for a 9.8 pre-screen with CGC. CGC recently removed their minimum quantities for pre-screens. It was 25 books. It's now 0, right? You can send 1 book in. And so this gives you the ability to send this comic in to have it be pre-screened at a 9.8. In my opinion, if you are talking modern comics, a modern comic is probably going to have its real value at a 9.8. I would not worry about a 9.6 or below. That is my personal opinion. You can decide what it is that you might want to do. I finished reading World Tree a short while ago. I found it okay. I wasn't exactly blown away by it. It's an okay book. We'll see where the story actually goes, but I at least wanted to acknowledge that book because there is a lot of excitement around it right now. The very last book that we're going to look at is another book that a lot of folks are paying attention to right now for whatever reason. I don't quite know why. This is Secret Wars issue number 12. She-Hulk actually joins the Fantastic Four. And I don't know why this book is being talked about right now. Maybe people are assuming that She-Hulk is going to be part of the FF when they come to the MCU. I honestly don't know. But for whatever reason, this book is out there as a discussion point right now. Definitely a cool book. No doubt about it. Great series. I have the entire run of this great series, no doubt. And as we go ahead and look over here at the right column, we can see what's going on with the value. If you happen to have a 9.9 of this book, you're a man. You're in a great place. $1,700 is the value that they're showing. 9.8 looks at $135, and a 9.6 starts to decline to $72. And again, if it's not a 9.8 of this book right now, I don't know that I would send it in. And you can do the same thing here. Let's say you have a book. You think it's a great copy, do a pre-screen, pre-screen for a 9.8 and go ahead and send it in and take that shot on goal. If you miss, you pay, I think it's like $9 or something like that. I think that's the new fee that you pay, and they send the book back to you. No harm, no foul. You lose a couple of bucks, but it seems like unless this book is a 9.8, it is not yet worthy of being graded, just because essentially you might be a little upside down. Again, if you assume a cost of $70, a value of 72, it just doesn't work itself out the right way. So again, just a really cool book that I wanted to acknowledge because I know that this is on a lot of people's radar. So there you have it. Just a couple of cool books that you may want to consider sending in to be graded if you happen to have them in your collection. If you have books in your collection that you're thinking about sending in to be graded and you want my opinion on them, don't be shy about leaving those suggestions down in the comment section. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I want to invite you to do so now. Turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content released from the channel. And if you want to reach out to me directly, you can do that on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yeah. Should you practice art, or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master, the one that's more than a rapper, the one that's an educator, the one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts, he's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan, straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations, synergy and combinations. You fly and we waiting, Indian style in the gold.